Oddly shaped watches are all the rage. There's one problem with watches that have an odd shape, at least right now. There aren't very many affordable versions out there. It's a little bit expensive to create a case that's basically from scratch. You have to come up with a weird shape, and then they have to make those cases from scratch, and that costs a lot of money. However, today we're taking a look at a watch that's inspired by the butterfly effect, and it's a very odd case. But at the same time, I think it's very well executed. So let's flip the camera and take a look at a really cool, hand-wound, oddly shaped dress watch for well under $500. This is definitely one of those watches you're either going to love or you're going to hate. Either you love the Cartier Crash or you don't. That's a very polarizing watch. They go for a lot of money, and obviously it's going to inspire other projects, and this is definitely inspired by the Cartier Crash, maybe some other watches. However, this is definitely its own design. It's inspired by the butterfly effect. Like I mentioned in the intro, this gets a very bespoke pebble-shaped case. There's 4 steps to that bezel. It's really not a bezel, it's really just the case. And then you have this beautiful sapphire crystal that echoes the shape of the case. The dial echoes the shape of the case as well. There is texturing on that sub-dial, which again is shaped a little bit like the case. It's oddly shaped as well. And then you have an odd shape in the middle that echoes the shape of the case as well. So that is a brushed portion. Then there is a textured portion all the way around the dial that has the markings for telling the time. And you have a very organic set of hands. It goes for all 3 hands, that sub-dial, which is a small seconds, and then the hour and minutes. There is no lume on this because this is a dress watch, but you get very short lugs where you have lugs. So there is one lug right here. However, when you flip it over, you're going to notice there really aren't lugs here, here, and there is one here. So this is such a short lug, I wouldn't even call it a lug. And then on this side of the watch, there are very, very short lugs that just protrude a little bit. It's part of the design, and I think it looks really good, especially from the front. From the back, obviously, it's interesting as well because they've done some pretty interesting things with this watch. You have that same shape, so the case back echoes the shape of the case, the sapphire crystal in the case back. That little tiny window that lets you see the hand wound movement inside echoes the shape of the case back. So they went full on with this design, and I think they achieved something very special, especially considering the price. We'll get back to the price in just a few minutes. I have 3 dial colors to show you guys. This is the salmon copper dial. Then there is a green dial and a silver dial. So the silver dial gets a black sub register. So that small seconds is in black and it looks really good. This kind of reminds me of the Jetsons a little bit, crossed with a Cartier Crash and maybe a traditional dress watch. It's just really cool. I know, again, a lot of people will not like this watch. There are a bunch of watches out there that have been coming out with odd shapes. A lot of them are derivatives of others. And like I said, it's hard to say that this is not inspired by other watches, but this is definitely a design that they've come up with on their own. It's pretty easy to tell time on these watches as well. Those hands are polished, they're black polish, and they stand out pretty well against the background. Even though this is a silver background, it stands out pretty well. And then you have that black sub-dial. All of the indices are just lines, and in between each indice, so the 12 and the 1 o'clock, the texture is different. It's in a different direction. It's all the same texture, but it's just in a different direction. So it's really cool. They did a lot here. They put a lot of thought and effort into the design. And again, considering the price, you have the crown that it's sitting at the 4 o'clock position. It's a thin crown. It is a hand wound movement. I would say it's on the smaller side. It's a little bit difficult to wind your watch if you have big hands like I do, but I don't think it could work any other way. If they put a large crown on here, it kind of would mess up the look of this watch. So I like that they put a small thin crown on there. They tried to make it as grippy as possible, so there's some knurling on there. So it is pretty easy to wind. It could be easier if it was bigger, but it's not terrible. You do get a sapphire crystal on here, and the sapphire crystal is, like I said, part of that case design. It's another step in that case. So that's the first step, that sapphire crystal, which sits really far off of the case. And then you go into the case and you have 4 steps into that case. It's really cool. It almost looks curved, but I don't think it actually is. When you turn it on its side, you can see that it's really not curved. But when you're looking at it from the top, because the pebble shape, the way that the case sort of looks from the top, it almost looks like the watch itself is curved, but it's not, and it's just I guess, an illusion, but it looks really interesting. It's hard to choose which one I like the best, but the green dial is very interesting. This is a 38 millimeter watch. However, it doesn't wear like a 38 millimeter watch. Because you have such an odd shape, it's 36 millimeters in certain spots, 39 in others, so it depends on how you actually measure it. That's the lug to lug and the width of the watch. And then it's around 9.4 millimeters thick. That's including that very boxed sapphire crystal. So it is a very boxed, flat sapphire crystal, like a top hat sapphire crystal. And without that sapphire crystal, it's probably around 8.5 millimeters thick. That's because you're getting a hand-wound seagull movement inside. It is the ST17. If you're not familiar with this movement, it's essentially a hand-wound movement that is often used by brands like Timex and a few other brands. It's a really good movement. It's very reliable, and it's also pretty thin. That's why it works really well in this watch. And it also keeps the cost down, because when you think about bespoke items in watchmaking, this case is extremely bespoke. The case back, bespoke. The dial, the hands, everything here is bespoke. That sapphire crystal, the crown, even the case back window, that display case back, very bespoke. So I think they wanted to use somewhat of a base movement to keep the price down on this watch, and they did it. I'll tell you about the price in just a few seconds. On my wrist today, I have a Tourbillon by Angelus. This is a recent purchase. It was a grail watch of mine for many, many years, and I eventually bought it. It's called the U50. It's in grade 5 titanium, and it gets 300 meters of water resistance. It's a big watch, but I love it, and I had to have it. And eventually, I just saved up. I sold a bunch of watches, and here it is. I really love this watch. There is the silver dial on my 7.5-inch wrist. Like I said, this is a 38 millimeter watch. It wears like a 37 millimeter watch. Maybe it wears like a 38 millimeter watch. I don't know. You guys tell me. Do you think it wears small? That's because you don't really have lugs on here. You have 2 lugs. The other lugs on here are very, very small. So it's 38 millimeters lug to lug, depending on, again, how you measure this. And then around a 9.4 millimeter thickness, including that very boxed sapphire crystal. But you can see it wears very thin to the wrist. And there is the salmon dial. You can see that all the straps on here are also beautiful. They're using a pebbled leather. It's the same color and same leather on both sides of the strap. And you also get a really nice buckle on here. It's a bespoke buckle, or at least it looks like a milled buckle. So I'm not sure if it's used by other brands, but it kind of is in line with the rest of the watch. Maybe if they used something that was a little bit more stepped, like the case, that would be really cool. But I think that would be my only complaint. There's no date. It's really a clean design almost. Even though it's kind of a weird design, it's definitely refreshing. I really love this salmon dial as well. And there is the green dial on my 7.5-inch wrist. One of my favorite aspects of this design is those lugs that stick out. When you are looking at it from the top, there's just one lug right there, and it's almost like a little horn on the top of the watch. You would think that doesn't work, but it does. It looks very interesting. I think when people see this on your wrist, they're going to think it costs a lot more money. This watch doesn't really cost all that much money. It's $475. For this design, something very hard to do, something very interesting and mechanical with a sapphire crystal hand-wound movement and a very bespoke case, $475 is not all that much. And I believe they are going to be on Kickstarter. I'm not sure if it's available directly on their website. It will be available April 18th. That's when the watch will be officially available. There is no lume here because this is a dress watch, but there you go. It would be cool if they put some lume on here, maybe something that echoed the case like they did with the sapphire crystal and all the other components. That would be very, very cool. We'd love to see a second iteration of this eventually with some other details, maybe like a sports watch version. That would be really cool. But right now, I think they're a new brand, so this is their first attempt, and I think they did a great job considering, and the price is definitely very good. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of this watch? What do you think of oddly shaped watches in general? Tell me down in the comments section below. Please also don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It's super helpful for the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you for logging on. Thank you for watching this video. I will catch you guys in the next video.